Hi there, welcome to the video. Welcome to the Idaho 4 case to do with Bryan Kohberger. We're just going to be taking a look at the latest, most recent news and see where things are at, how stuff is going, okay? Could treat it as a bit of a read along. As we do go through this news article, feel free to add additional points in yourself, your opinions, reactions, whatever, in the chat box, okay? If you do have any additional questions, you can list them down below too. There will be the odd link to other playlist of cases I've done if you are interested in them, okay? Because I'm not too sure who's watching this, whether it be people from the Idaho 4 case community or if it be regular viewers. But whatever, links down below so you can, move about to different locations, okay? We don't need to look at comments today of previous videos, because that's to do with Dylan Rounds. This isn't to do with Dylan Rounds, okay? So you can argue it's a bit more of a focused video on a different case, right? We'll see how it goes. We see if there's resistance or there is understanding. Only one way to find out. So let's just head on over to this news article and feel free to add additional points in if you notice any inaccuracies, any misinformation, okay? Here we are. The title of this article reads, Bryan Kohberger challenges indictment as lawyers argue prosecution refuses to hand over evidence. Prosecution refuses to hand over evidence. So it seems overall the theme of this article is a level of resistance from different sides. Some not handing over evidence, Bryan Kohberger behaving a certain way. Interesting. By Noah Half of our Daily Mail. 15th of June 2023. Let's take a look. So already we've got some photos here, some media. On the left, you've got Bryan Kohberger. To be fair, his facial expressions look the exact same with every photo taken of him, or at least from the ones I've seen. Sure, straight face, what do you expect? Though, I guess it's the lack of facial expression, possibly. And then on the right, obviously, the victims are people who were taken away from this earth. There we go, let's continue. Idaho murders suspect Bryan Kohberger has filed court documents that indicate he may challenge his indictment. As his lawyer claims, they're certain there is exculpatory evidence that could clear him of his charges. Wow. That's interesting, that. Kohberger was indicted on 4 counts of first-degree murder and a single count of burglary on May 16th by a secret grand jury impaneled by the state. I didn't really look back at the date. May 16th. Although different areas, May 16th. So this was before... Was this before Dylan Rounds went missing? Anyway, first-degree murder. Okay. Kohberger's legal team has since demanded the state turn over items of evidence that his defense claimed could prove his innocence of the accused quadruple murder. The state and the defense have since been battling over what grand jury materials will be provided to Kohberger's team. Okay, so it explains it a little bit clearer here, fair enough. So they want the state to turn over items of evidence. That evidence could prove his innocence. Wow. Now, that innocence can be proven with that evidence, could be released. What's the chances, though? What are the chances in, your thoughts, your opinion? Should we do a poll right now? Just do a little small poll. It can be based off this supposed evidence which could prove Bryan Kohberger's innocence in his whole case. What's the chances of success that he'd be released, his charges cleared? Or lessened, some of them reduced, taken away. High chance, no chance, small chance, I don't know. Feel free to vote right now. So it seems like the state is a little bit slow in turning over these items. Could you say there's a bit of biasness? I don't know. You've got to understand that there'll be evidence to prove Bryan Kohberger's guiltiness, if that's a word. So it depends where the balance lies on the scales. You can sense like a bit of resistance. Are certain people not willing, a little bit reluctant to pass on the evidence because they feel that maybe it could go the wrong way? I think ultimately The main focus is here is to do it correctly and to make sure there is a form of justice for the family, but as well for the long term, because if Bryan does get released, his charges cleared or lessened, reduced, big threat levels for the future, right? He is youngish, about 28, 29, right? So even if things were reduced, certain charges taken away from him, and then he served his time and then he would be released later, he can still pose as a threat to the general public, right? So you got to think the long term. Just like with the Dylan Rounds case, okay, with Brenner. Whilst Brenner is locked up at this moment in time, certain plea deals offers, if it led to a lessened sentence, so then he could get out in the future, he could pose a threat to the community and more people could get hurt. And in a case like this with Idaho 4, with those talks in the background of Bryan Kohberger may have took other people out at a certain point, or is capable at least, more crime could happen down the line, and you want to risk that? Anyway, let's continue reading this. The 28-year-old criminology graduate student was accused of knifing 4 college students, Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Goncalves, Zana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, to death in Moscow, Idaho last November in a scene police described as the worst we've ever seen. The defence is now arguing that after 6 months of extreme media coverage in such a small community revolving such a high-profile case, that they have the right to determine the selection process of the grand jury, as well as the disclosure of any exculpatory evidence presented to them. Okay. Defence now arguing 6 months of extreme media coverage in such a small community. High-profile case. I get that. You think about it, you look online, you look at all the different channels that are branched off from Dylan Rounds' case and have all been talking about Idaho 4, and then all the other regulars and, true crime channels and all that out there, all focused on Idaho 4, like Zavgirl, Tyler Feller, Mob Crew Chris. Did Doug from No Thanks cover? I don't think he has. He's covered on, Summer Wells' case. What about Jim Terry? What about Salty Pancakes? They've not really covered or ever really talked about Idaho 4, so I guess it's because it's not to do with missing people, so they don't really focus on that area. It's not their speciality, I guess. So you will have all the typical true crime channels all following one another. Do they do it as a form of success to help one another out, or do they just do it because it's the latest, hottest topic? Probably that. They have the right to determine the selection. Right. As Kohberger once again. What's that? Kohberger's lawyer claims there's certain, right, clear his charges. You see there, it says clear him of his charges. So, what, both the burglary and the, 4 counts of first-degree murder? Yeah, there's the house where the crime scene took place, taped off and everything. My question is, okay, if that's where it took place, why is the building next door on the right the one that's blurred out? I don't quite understand. Do you get what I'm saying? Because I saw it on the maps in the past. Yeah, there we go. So it says in November, last year? Right, so whatever date I read further on up where it said May the 6th, that's something completely different. So this event happened after the Dylan Rounds case, right? Hence why people were covering Dylan Rounds at the time, because it was the hottest subject, and then moved on to something else, which was Idaho. The defence also claims that since the death penalty is a possibility in his case and Kohberger did not waiver his right to a speedy trial, the state's failure to provide all requested materials obstructs their ability to make a strong defence on behalf of their client, according to CBS Austin. Right, so there's a bit of delaying, a bit of dragging out, things not maybe going as smoothly as needed. And when they say about the death penalty, that applies to the firing squad. And I can't remember who it was now, but one of the victims' families, and one of their daughter, whichever one it was taken out, that family does want the firing squad death penalty put on Bryan Kohberger, right? I don't know about the other families, not really seen any additional articles there, but you want to fill in the blanks, feel free to do so. It's in the state's failure to provide all requested materials. So, because of the state's failure, do you think they'll ever be investigated down the line? Even though Bryan could be considered the bad guy and the only bad guy, and it's obvious, let's just say, will the state ever be investigated? Some kind of appeal, some kind of, I don't know, look into things down the line, maybe? I mean, makes you think with the Dylan Rouse case, would there be any issues there, any forms of corruption? Doesn't seem to be. No, just more like things being delayed out. Brenner himself, with the attorneys quitting on him and then new attorneys being appointed. The true court case, the true charges to Brenner haven't even been like fully, haven't fully begun yet because of all this background stuff that's going on. But there seems to be a difference, right? The difference here with this like court, with this state, do you call it state? Yeah, the state, compared to, the other one, Dylan. Yeah, there is a difference. Come read them. Defense counsel Anna Taylor sent a motion to the court requesting that if all such evidence is not turned over without delay, that the court should temporarily halt the proceedings to allow for sufficient time to conduct an appropriate review of the grand jury proceedings. Okay. So it explains that. State's response showed that prosecuting attorney Bill Thompson recognised the substantial amount of discovery involved in this case and acknowledged that a major trial is set to take place under 4 months. Thompson said he does not have a problem with a reasonable time extension for the defence to comply with its obligations under Idaho law. However, he requests the same courtesy for the state should the defence proffer a notice of alibi. Kohberger declined to enter a plea to the charges in May. I see. The first step in what promises to be a lengthy legal process. Just this week, his lawyers asked the judge for more time, decide if alibi will be part of their defence strategy. An alibi? So what? An alibi of Bryan at the time when these murders took place, but he was somewhere else. Who is this alibi? Is there a person out there, some kind of alt witness? I don't know. Does this alibi tie in with that evidence in the background that the state needs to hand over, which could prove his innocence in some way? Makes you think, right? I mean, really, if there was, and correct me if I'm wrong, if there was true CCTV inside the building when it all took place, that would be more than enough, right? True incriminating evidence. But I guess that's what's lacking. Some cameras out and about, but further afar, nowhere near the scene of the crime. What's that? Kootenai Courtney, public defender, and Taylor is leading Kohberger's defence team. Okay, there she is. There's Bryan. Oh, actually, he does have a bit of a different facial expression there, Bryan. He's got a bit of a smirk on him. You see on the side of his face. Yeah. Interesting. I don't know if anyone does agree, but maybe with Bryan's educational background, does that play a strength in what's going on with the court proceedings and how to behave, how to act, what to say, what not to do? Does anyone agree with that? Let's just do another little poll outside of the box thinking. The poll can be, due to Bryan's educational background, does that play a strength in his situation whilst in court? Yes, no, a little, I don't know. Feel free to vote, okay? Kohberger, 28, charged with burglary. Yeah, there he is again. Kohberger has filed court documents that indicate he may challenge his indictment. Prosecutors preparing for the trial of Idaho murder suspect in court last week are asking for a dramatic increase in funding to cover trial expenses. I don't know if it mentions it here, but another article was talking about that, and it said they need to raise funds up to $120,000 or something. I also heard that when we're looking back at the death penalty article back then to do with Bryan Kohberger and the firing squad, there was like, what was it, $750,000 needed or so? I don't know if for it to be all set up just for that one death penalty on Bryan, or if it's like a new development. I can't remember, but I do remember those figures. Oh, there he is. Yeah, he was used in a different article with that face. There we go. It says, Latah County Prosecutor Bill Thompson asked for $135,000 for trial expenses in his latest annual budget request, rather than the usual budget of $15,000. Well, there's a massive difference there, but then again, I guess with a high-profile case comes with possible higher cost. 28-year-old stayed silent at his 10-minute arraignment as the judge entered a not guilty plea on his behalf. Kohberger declined to waiver his right to a speedy trial, so the judge scheduled it to begin October the 2nd. Wow, that's quite some time. October the 2nd. So what happens from now and in between? Is there more investigation, more evidence? I mean, what happened with the whole, online activity of Bryan Kohberger? How it could link in some way, whether it be to do with the victims or the plan to build up to what went down then. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit later in this video if you stick around. But as you see, a 10-minute arraignment. So when it came to Brenner with the Dylan Rounds case, it was just like a little court hearing and that's all. And that was about 9 minutes. So kind of equal timing, not too much of a difference apart from one another. It says the judge entered a not guilty plea on his behalf. Interesting. Now, I guess Bryan knows what he's doing by keeping quiet, but he wants it dragged out. Now, why would he want it dragged out? What, to provide more time for possible evidence to come out? Maybe for that evidence that supports him to be passed on over, for that alibi possibly to be used. Maybe. Like, depending what side you're on, right? If you're the one, the family or victim, family, whatever, wanting justice, sometimes you want the court hearings over and done with, done as soon as possible for maximum justice and to be able to recover and move on in life, right? But there'll be times where you want it slowed down and you won't complain because maybe you just need a bit more evidence to fulfill this, this case. And it applied to Brenner in the Dylan Rounds case, before 3rd of March, right, 2023. All before that, things being delayed, it was good because it enabled and allowed the family to possibly find new evidence or, just get on with stuff in the background, right? And, in a case like this, does the same apply? I don't think so. I think it applies the other way around. Not the victims, the families that need more time. It seems to be Bryan, and that's why he's keeping quiet. You see how from different sides of the story, the good people, the bad people, at times they may both want a case to be dragged out a little bit longer to benefit them in some way or another. Then equally, some may want it over and done with quickly. What else? This comes after Kohberger's attorneys requested more time to decide whether or not they will submit an alibi, fair enough, as part of his defence earlier this week. In the latest court filings, his attorneys asked the court for an extension in their decision whether or not to present an alibi. It was in response to a state law that requires attorneys to submit their intention to provide an alibi before trial gets underway. They say the discovery involved in the case has been voluminous and still ongoing, and that they need more time to wade through the evidence before finalising their defence strategy and notifying the court of it. So delay things, try and strengthen the defence, try and get the best outcome in their situation. I get that, I understand. Where it says discovery involved has been voluminous. Wow. What, the discovery of evidence speaks volume. Hard-hitting. Does anyone know what that evidence could be? Does anyone know what that alibi could be? Feel free to share your thoughts, ideas. If you actually know, of course, list it down below in the comments or chat, but you can guess as well. There's no harm. Okay, start some discussions. What do we have here? A little photo, Washington, Idaho. Oh, the line going down, that's the border, right? Yeah, okay. So this is an interesting, map here. Interesting. So, bit mileage, but it's kind of like the Dylan Rounds case once again, how person impacted, killed, not far from the border, going into the other state. Okay. So on the left-hand side, you've got Pullman, Washington, Washington State University, where Bryan Kohberger studies criminology. Fair enough. Then on the right, you got Moscow, Idaho. Moscow, home where 4 students were murdered. You can see it all mapped out. And I guess between the 2 places, a distance of 8.4 miles, not that far away. So depending, it's kind of easy to get about and it doesn't take that long, not time consuming, especially at the time of when things went down on that day or night. That night, yeah. It's like near Scranton, PA, Kohberger is arrested. Wow, so quite some distance covered there from all the way that way, all the way down there. Wow. University where Bryan Kohberger worked was only a little over 8 miles from the murder scene. In the district court of the 2nd Judicial District of the state of Idaho and in for the county of Latah, state of Idaho, versus Bryan C. Kohberger. Okay, so we've got some court documents. Do we read it? We might as well. Comes now Bryan Kohberger by and through his attorney, Annie C. Taylor, public defender, and hereby requests the court to find good cause for an exception, or in the alternative, extend time for compliance with Idaho Code. This motion is made on the grounds that, shown order exception to compliance. Good cause for an exception in Mr. Kohberger's case exists. Since Kohberger's arrest in late December, the prosecutor has disclosed 51 terabytes of information that includes thousands of pages of discovery. Wow. Thousands of photographs, hundreds of hours of recordings, further many gigabytes of electronics. That's a lot. Phone record and social media data has been disclosed. Okay. Does this tie in with what we were looking at last time? Discovery is voluminous and still ongoing. Mr. Kohberger and his defense team continue to both navigate discovery disclosed by the state and investigate the charges against Mr. Kohberger. Compliance is at a minimum. Premature as wading through the extensive information that makes up the case is incomplete. Compliance may tread into disclosures of protected information. The defense needs time to make this determination and consider evidentiary rules. As such, Mr. Kohberger respectfully requests an exception to compliance or an extension of time. Should the court not be inclined to grant this motion, counsel requests that this motion be set for hearing in order to present oral argument, evidence and/or testimony in support thereof. Requested time is 15 minutes. Dated this 9th day of June 2023. Okay. So, hold on, let's just go back. Where do we read it? So the bit where it says, late December, prosecutors have disclosed 51 terabytes. That's quite a lot. It goes on to say, phone record and social media data has been disclosed. Undisclosed, disclosed, disclosed, undisclosed. I keep getting mixed up between which one's which. One means it's held back, the other one means it's been released to the public. But nevertheless, are they saying that possible social media data links to Kohberger's innocence? I don't know, some kind of alibi? Is that where it comes from, originates? Or something more in real life, a witness? Makes me think and wonder. Anyway, also this week, the prosecutors preparing for the trial asked for a dramatic increase in funding, as we saw, to cover trial expenses. So to be honest, if you think about it, whilst Bryan is keeping quiet and the case is being dragged out, things being delayed, maybe pushed back, and with the cost of all this, the expenses being quite high, I guess the longer it goes on for, the higher the expenses. Who benefits there? Not really anyone. Latah County Prosecutor Bill Thompson submitted his annual budget request to county commissioners on Tuesday, asking for $135,000 for trial expenses, rather than usual budget of $15,000, the Lewiston Tribune reported. Now, is there anyone in chat, like, I don't know myself, but anyone in chat, what is the most expensive court case or court expenses you've ever heard, seen of? Feel free to give the figure down below in the chat. It'll be interesting to see. In the past, we talked about, what's the highest amount of reward money ever offered to, finding a missing person. It'll be interesting now to see what's the most expensive court expenses, right, when it's come to like a true crime case, okay? Feel free to list it down below if you know some figures. Right. Kohberger's legal team filed a motion to compel discovery in the Latah County Court last Thursday. It reiterates the previous request made on February the 3rd and March 24th. It saw all body and dash cam footage from officers involved in his arrest in Pennsylvania, all audio or video evidence from his time in jail, including police interrogations, lab reports from the forensic evidence seized at his parents' home and his Hyundai Elantra, that main one, yeah, and the training records for officers involved in the case. So, lots gone on. A lot has been processed, evidence here, there, everywhere, different forms, aspects, and the use of interrogations taking place. More here than in the Dylan Rounds case with Brenner, for sure. Is that it? Almost. That legal filing came after it was revealed that police found traces of blood and a secret storage locker at his apartment in Pullman, Washington, 15-minute drive from where the alleged murders took place. Right. Traces of blood and a secret storage locker at his apartment. What? So his apartment had some kind of blood stains there. So, went to Moscow, Idaho, did what he did, and then went back to his apartment. Hence why the blood was there. Interesting way to end this article. But there you go. That's the latest news there with the court hearings and cases. So I just wanted to share that information and news with you. Maybe some of you were aware, others maybe not. Just as a place, a collective place where opinions and reactions can take place. More importantly, with people that know more than others, different outside of the box thinking, and simply reactions to what's currently going on now. Are you satisfied with the way the Idaho 4 case is going, or are you slightly concerned with that factor of possible evidence, alibi to prove Kohberger's innocence? Just feel free to share your thoughts down below. And as well, just out of a brief question, where and how do people follow this case? Do people follow it on YouTube channels, or different platforms? Let me know down below. Is there any forums out there, other websites which you've followed, right? Because with the Dylan Rounds case, the alternative websites I've looked at, of course, was the Find Dylan Rounds Facebook page, as well as the Crime Watchers page. Maybe, just maybe, Crime Watchers page might also incorporate the Idaho 4 case. Maybe I might take a look at that someday, yeah. What page though? Do I start from the beginning? Probably not a good idea. I don't think it would go well that, looking back, I feel the times when you look back at a case which is still ongoing and far ahead is when it feels like there's a bit of road blockage. It's come to a grind, it's come to a halt, it feels like the case is dying. That's when you tend to look back. Whereas in the Idaho 4 case, you don't really have to as much, unless you're in a position where you can look back and try and find additional evidence, counter for or against points and arguments, right? That's what I would say. So maybe look into it in the future, just see how this video is and, what people think about it. Of course, I'm not an expert. No, I've been covering Dylan Rounds, 300 plus videos, but every now and then, no harm in breaking it up, looking elsewhere. Because if you think about it, at the end of the day, when you look at other true crime channels out there, true crime channels, my channel is a hybrid and it's proven with my videos and playlist. But other channels out there are dedicated to true crime. And when you see the layouts, when you see the videos, it's them sat there with the obnoxious, oversized microphones shoved in the gob, big headsets on to look like they know what they're doing, which at times they do know, other times maybe not. And they're basically just literally playing a full-length video on YouTube, sat there and reacting to it. So is it as hands-on? Is it as interactional? Maybe not. But then again, it depends what case you're working with and what you have in play, right? I guess maybe in the early mid-range days of this Idaho 4 case, it might have been a bit more hands-on, people trying to make sense of stuff, people trying to investigate the house and where it took place. I actually heard and saw like there was some kind of, I don't know, it was like a software, some kind of simulation, or do you know, like when you get Street View, like Google Street View, there was some kind of like property inside room tour of the house, I guess before the murders took place, but you could actually go around each different room and just have a look inside of how the layout was and how things could have played out. And I think someone also had some kind of like map as well, map blueprints. So that's the level. And I think people got a bit too excited with that because you all started looking into it. But then again, I'm not sure if some people said it's illegal to do or it could cause trouble with the police. I don't know. Kind of loose that, but if anyone else remembers it, feel free to talk, okay? And as for the, random, shout out to Bandit TV if he's present, because I remember him popping in last time when covering this case and he did help when clearing up some questions. So shout out to Bandit TV if they're watching in the background, okay? But yeah, as for the like data online activity, social media accounts, searches, results, whatever it may be, how it can apply with Bryan Kohberger and the Idaho 4 case, has that really been truly revealed? Does anyone in the public know about that activity, how it could apply? Does it incriminate him, or is it some kind of alibi, some kind of to prove his innocence in some way? I'm not sure personally, because I did try a look and it didn't really say much about it. I believe, I can't remember the last time we looked at this, maybe it was some weeks ago, but last one we looked at was to do with Bryan Kohberger's activity online, possibly searching profiles of those victims before it all took place, kind of like stalking them in a way, or maybe seeing where they live or where they're at a certain point in time, their behaviour patterns, all that. We could have been planning it out, or at least just getting an understanding of that individual and who they are. Maybe checking for vulnerabilities, strengths, weaknesses. You never know. And it's not just like social media, it could also be Google search results when you type in stuff there, or if you're even looking on Amazon for items to buy, all kinds of possibilities, right? Was there anything else to add in? Speaking of online activity, I remember Bandit TV as well saying that there was potential that in the early days of the case, before Bryan Kohberger was arrested, that he was actually appearing on YouTube in live chats of live streams, true crimers out there on YouTube, their channels, Bryan Kohberger popping on in, but not definitively revealing his true identity, but being present. And that is kind of creepy in a way. I don't think it happens that often. And when it does, though, it does feel a bit weird, especially if you had no clue at the time and you look back. You could have even spoke to him. You could have even joked with him and had a laugh. And you realise you were arguably, digitally, very close to him in proximity. Weird thoughts. Anyway, I think we'll leave it there for now, okay? Because that's kind of like the latest news. See what happens next. See if there's any outside of the box thinking that can take place. Also, feel free to share the video if you want, but you don't have to. I guess the importance isn't as strong here compared to the Dylan Rounds case, because the Dylan Rounds case isn't as popular anymore, and that needs more awareness. Idaho 4 case probably already has enough awareness, but if you do like the video, that's okay. If you found it helpful, interesting, that's good to know. If you do have any suggestions aimed towards me, or just your own thoughts of outside of the box thinking when it comes to the Idaho 4 case, feel free to list it down below. And most of you will understand what I mean by outside of the box thinking, whether it be the event itself, the person involved, or maybe the victims, a backstory, right? Additional factors, stuff you would look at which maybe most people wouldn't question that much. Things you would find which majority don't see. That's what I say, outside of the box behavior. List it down below if you wish, and we'll see what happens next. Maybe Dylan Rounds, Kenny Veach, of course. We'll just see once we get to that checkpoint, okay? So thanks for watching, thanks for being patient, and I'll see you next time. For now, goodbye and good night.